Hello everybody again, this is Jason. I wanted to make this second video about the depression problems that I've gone through and what's really helped me. I noticed that my depression really kicked in when I was probably about 16 years old. At that time I had been experimenting with very light drugs, but like marijuana. I tried it out and I noticed that really kicked my condition into place, like, well, out of place, or however you would describe it. But basically I noticed at that point that I was really suffering with some really bad depression and some major euphoric feelings and just weird stuff that I had never felt in my life, and that was just with a very little bit or a very small amount of that drug. So definitely, I know some people with bipolar disorder have had really good luck with using marijuana as a coping medication, I guess is how you would call it. Some people have done really well with it. I, on the other hand, go in a very opposite direction, and it actually makes my condition way worse. So for me, I just can't do it. But around that time is when I really experienced the worst, absolute worst part of my depression. And like I said, around 16, 17, 18, the later part of high school, stuff like that, I was just feeling really like just these dark thoughts, wanted to be at home all the time, at the same time very creative as well, so there was kind of a benefit there. I was just getting into music at the time as a musician, with guitar, learning how to play bass guitar, stuff like that. And so on a creative level, like I was saying, it really helped me out a lot. But on a mental level, I was just really suffering, and I didn't even know what depression or anxiety was at the time, or any of that. I had friends that were manic depressive, and they were, bipolar 1, so they were on more of an extreme level, and I could kind of relate in some ways, but I made no connection to that being anything that I had. I just had these weird emotions and weird feelings, and as I was getting older, I noticed they would kind of get worse. I at one point was working at a job, full-time job, doing really well, in an office position, making pretty decent money, and my depression had gotten so bad that I ended up quitting that and working from home, doing stuff like I was really into guitar, so I wanted to teach guitar lessons. So for me, it was kind of an excuse to do something I really wanted. But I think part of the reason that I quit working at a normal job was the depression I had was so deep that I couldn't handle being at a place, bosses being around me, other employees, people having control over what I do, not having any time for creativity, stuff like that. So for me, I became a guitar teacher, and at first it was an amazing thing because I'm doing something that's something I'm very passionate about. I love playing music, so I'm teaching people how to do it, and I think I did really well at it. I think I was like a really good teacher, and made pretty good money doing it. But I think at the same time it was an excuse to get away from stressful things in my life and not deal with things that normal people normally deal with. So as much as it was good, I think it was equally as bad. I never researched medication at that point or anything because I just didn't know what was going on with me. I just thought I had a low self-esteem. I just thought, it was something I was born with, and maybe it was something that everybody else deals with too. So that's kind of how I felt about it. When I was about 23 years old, I had a really huge, just manic, low depression experience. Probably the worst I had ever had, and actually probably one of the worst I've ever had. And it really got me to think, that I need to start looking into what's going on here. And so I did go to a doctor, and that's like in my last video, that's when I had tried the Zoloft and stuff like that, and it didn't work. It made things worse. But still, we didn't have any indication that I was bipolar 2 at that point. So as far as I knew, I just had depression with some anxiety symptoms. As my depression crept back in my mid-20s, it got to a really bad level to where I started using food. I've always used food as a comfort thing in my life to deal with stress and anxiety. But as I got into my mid-20s, I got really bad with, like I don't know, I guess an eating disorder of some sort, where I would just eat nonstop. And especially when I got into relationships, I would find myself just eating tons and tons. And I ended up gaining 100 pounds in like 1 year. I was about 80 pounds heavier than I am now, and about 270 pounds. And it was really just like, that even impacted my depression even worse. I thought I was a goner at that point, just overweight, unhappy, nothing in my life going right at that point. So at that point, I started to look into diet and exercise as a possible way to not only lose the weight, but maybe feel better. I got into the Atkins diet craze back in, 2002, 2003, when it was real popular. And I did lose a lot of weight with it, but I only got so far with that. And I really wanted to get into the exercise thing because I'd never really had done that before. I played around with it before, but never really got serious about it. And this is where I found the biggest discovery and a health reward for my condition. And you read about it all the time. People always say exercise. It's the way to go. So I got into a program